Mhm.
Our speakers tonight are Chuck Hundertmark and Gregg Goodrich. Gregg Goodrich is a longtime DFO member and field trip leader. Gregg has been using eBird for about 16 years now and was impressed with the ease of use and ability to document bird sightings in the field in real time without paper and pen. Gregg has led several DFO field trips dedicated specifically to eBird training and has also coordinated a half-day DFO workshop at the new Bar Lake Visitor Center classroom. He believes that eBird is a great tool to further bird conservation, bird science, and to keep your personal bird lists. Chuck Hundertmark, probably many of you know Chuck as a past president of DFO. He's also been a field trip leader for many years and an occasional presenter at DFO meetings. Chuck began using eBird in 2006 and has used it regularly since 2011. He does not profess to be an eBird expert, but is an enthusiastic and a self-confessed, opinionated advocate for eBird. So we're pleased to have both you, Chuck, and Gregg tonight to talk about eBird.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks all of you for joining us this evening for this first of the season DFO program. I'm going to take a minute here to share my computer screen with you. So, like many of you who are already using eBird or who are considering using eBird, I first thought about eBird as a tool for recording my checklists and storing them. And then I thought, well, a nice side effect of that would be I would be contributing to citizen science with every contribution I make. But over time, I began to see additional uses for eBird, and in particular, I found it to be a nice tool for planning birding trips. And last year, when Paul Slingsby and I were planning a trip to Costa Rica, we were using eBird to explore some of the locations we planned to bird, to see what birds we might see there, and bone up on those birds so we'd be ready for our trip. And as I was doing that, came upon this checklist submitted by a young California birder, Ryan Andrews, and this is a list for one of the places Paul and I planned to visit, one of the first places, Arenal Observatory Lodge. And if you'll notice on the, let's go back. If you'll notice on the left side of the screen, there's a detailed list of comments there where he describes how they birded this location and where the particularly good birding spots were, what kind of birds they found. And then in the species accounts over here, where they found a bird that might be particularly interesting to other birders, he gave another description of exactly where the bird was found or what it was doing, and interesting comments about those birds. And these are the kinds of comments that can make a checklist really interesting to other birders who are planning their birding outings. And so it was at that point I came to think of eBird not just as two tools, but as a three-blade knife. And the first is what we all initially sign on to eBird for, which is a place where we can do our checklists, record our checklists, and store them and organize them. And it replaces the paper field trips that we field lists that we used to keep. It replaces our notebooks. It can replace the electronic databases that many people had begun using, things like Avasys or a Paradox database. And most of us are familiar with citizen science through Christmas bird counts or breeding bird surveys or breeding bird atlas work, bird banding. But with eBird, every time you submit a checklist, you're submitting data that can be used by researchers around the world. But the third leg is participation, or the third blade is participation in the birding community. A way to become a better birding citizen. And we participate already as members of the birding community through things like co-birds. And many of you used to participate through the Rare Bird Alert. And a lot of people were unhappy to see the rare bird alert disappear, but eBird can replace many of the functions that are served by CoBirds and the rare bird alert. I'm not suggesting that we give up CoBirds, but how useful eBird is to other birders depends on how you use it. And in particular, your comments are what can make eBird a much more robust tool for participating in the birding community, making your data useful for other birders. So in the next few minutes, Gregg Goodrich and I are going to talk about two sides of the eBird toolkit. Gregg is going to talk about eBird Mobile, and that's an application you can download for your smartphone where you can use that application to record your bird lists for a trip as you log them or as you see them. And then I'm going to spend a little time talking about the other side of the eBird picture, the eBird website. eBird website has even more tools than are available on the incredible eBird application, mobile application. And so we'll go through some of the things that you can do on the eBird website that you won't find on the eBird mobile app. And so with that, I want to kick this over now to Gregg. Gregg, it's all yours.
Good. Thank you so much, Chuck. Yes, I know that a lot of you may already be using eBird Mobile. So some of this will be fairly basic, but then again, there's been a few recent announcements. In fact, just today, I noticed that new Explore menu at the bottom of my eBird mobile app is now available. So it may be because I'm one of the beta testers, but I did notice that Ann had it as well. So it's a neat new feature that I'll show you in just a minute. Now, you're probably noticing that my screen looks a little bit different than Chuck's did. Mine is actually coming to you off of my phone. What you see is on my phone now. I'm zooming to you off the phone. In a second here, I'm going to share my desktop with you, and you'll see my actual screen on my phone, and then we'll walk through some of the features and functions that eBird Mobile has to offer. So it's definitely made me a better birder. I pay more attention to the birds and the habitat that I'm in. You can put breeding bird codes, so you pay attention to the behavior of those birds. So I've become a better birder using eBird. I think you will too. You should definitely try it. Also, fantastic for science, because every bird list that you do on eBird obviously goes into the massive database out at Cornell, which offers these apps for free and allows for much better science to be accomplished by all of the bird lists that we submit. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and it'll go to my desktop, which you should see here in just a second. Okay, so there you should see my screen from my phone. So that is a photograph that I took of a juvenile broadtail hummer that's sitting on a nest over in the Chatfield area. So fun thing. But there at the top are the two apps that I'm going to go over with you here real quickly. eBird Mobile there on the left, the little green E and the BIRD, sort of like my shirt. And then off to the right there is the Merlin Bird ID. And these are both free apps from Cornell that you can download off of the App Store if you have an iPhone like this one you're seeing right now, mine, or if you have an Android. Either one are available for you to download. Fantastic tools, and they're fairly tightly integrated with your logon ID and password that you have to ebird.org. So let's go ahead and get started on eBird Mobile. And I'm going to touch on eBird Mobile, and up pops a list there. You can see that it's got the current date and time there that you're getting ready to start your list. And right below that, you see record tracking. So in an important feature of eBird Mobile, it allows you to automatically track your distance and time. And so a good thing to go ahead and turn on each time you do a bird checklist. And then we're going to go over those icons across the bottom. Like I said, that Explorer is brand new. So it's a great feature to allow you to do some additional functions. It's just so new that I haven't had a chance to play with it much yet, but something that I think you'll find very, very interesting. Now, before we go across all those icons on the bottom, in the lower right-hand corner is the More button. And I'm going to go ahead and touch on that one because I want to talk about settings and account. And that's just where your logon ID. You can see my G Goodrich, and there's my logon ID. You can put your password in there, save it. You can create your account from here if you need to. So that's an important function to remember if it doesn't prompt you to enter your logon ID and password when you first download the app from the website. Also, at the very top of the screen, you see packs. And one of the nice new features of eBird Mobile is it downloads a state most likely to be seen pack of birds. So even if you're out in the field and you don't have any cell service, it doesn't matter. You can still do a list because it knows the birds of Colorado. Now, obviously, if you're going to another state or country, you want to install that. You can see I have installed packs across the top. I've installed Arizona, Colorado, and Ohio. Best to do these installations of packs. They're not huge, but it's best if you're on a Wi-Fi network to do those at home before you head out into the field. So if you're going to another state, another country, obviously do that. If you touch on the all, you'll see all the different countries that packs are available for. There in the search field, in all, you can type in a state or a country that you want to download a pack for. So important feature there. So I'm going to go back, and one last thing on this screen before we get into a checklist is the help screen. Now, help down at the bottom, you'll notice eBird frequently asked questions. Now, Chuck's going to go over this help menu there on the website a little bit more, but I wanted to make sure you knew about eBird FAQs down at the bottom, and that brings up another screen about the free eBird Essentials course. And this is a fantastic course to really give you a feel for how eBird Mobile and the eBird website all come together, the proper procedures for entering a checklist and how that all comes together. So a fantastic course, free, about a 3-hour course, but well worth the time and effort you put into that. I'm going to go back to the eBird mobile app, and across the bottom, lower left-hand corner, I'm going to click on Submit, touch Submit, and now we're back at the checklist. So this is what you'll see every time you bring up a checklist to start your checklist. So I'm going to go ahead and start the checklist. And what this does, up across the top of the screen, you'll see the time. So it's tracking the time that this list has been opened and the distance. Because I'm just doing it here from my home, obviously there's not going to be any mileage tracked. It'll be a stationary checklist. And then just to the right of that, I want you to take a look at that auto selected, and there's the latitude and the longitude of where this phone is right now, where you started your checklist. So even if you're out in the field and you don't have cell service, you can always attach it to a proper location once you get back home or you get back into cell service. But it's always going to know where you're at. The other cool thing with this lat long and the GPS tracking, because GPS is always on your phone, even if you don't have cell service, the GPS knows exactly where you are. So that's what's tracked there with the lat and long. What eBird does is it takes a 3-week window before and after the date that you opened up your checklist according to, read that fine print right below that top line. It says likely species based on 1,323 checklists in a 20 by 20 kilometer area. So there's 1,300 checklists that are all compiled with the previous 10 days before and 10 days after I'm doing this checklist of birds that are likely going to be seen in the location that I'm at. So powerful data coming from eBird to help you make sure you're getting your birds logged properly for the location that you're at. Now look down the list just a little bit here, and you'll see blue-winged teal and cinnamon teal have this little orange half circle off to the right of them. What that means is they're infrequently seen, less than 6% of the time at this location I'm at right now at this time of year that those two birds are seen. So just an interesting tidbit. Now, if I bring up my screen a little bit further, you'll see ringneck duck and also ringneck pheasant, both there with red circles. What that means is those birds have not been reported. So of those 1,300 checklists, this bird has not been reported in the area that I'm in, 20 by 20 kilometers. So interesting, not rare. There's not a rare indicator off to this right, which we'll see in just a minute, but still a good bird and an interesting bird on our part to know that, wow, this hasn't been reported. So let's get into posting some birds. So we're in the field and we see a mallard out there. That quick entry screen right below that likely species based, you'll see the little magnifying glass and the pound species name code. A very easy, quick entry way to log your birds. Now, of course, I could just type in, you always put the number in first. We see one mallard out there in the pond. Okay, I'm going to put 1 space M-A-L-L-A-R-D. Oh, it would help if I would put an M in there, wouldn't it? M-A-L-L-A-R-D. Well, you can see that it came up much quicker than me slowly typing in mallard. And that's the beauty. You don't have to do that. I can touch on mallard right now. It'll log my one mallard and I'm done. But these quick entry codes are basically for one word name birds like mallard, just M-A-L. That's all I have to do. So if I go back to the top of the screen and I touch back in the quick entry box, 1 space M-A-L, and up pops mallard right there. I just touch on mallard, and now I've got 2 mallards. Now, around the corner, we notice another 3 mallards in the pond. Well, I don't need to go through all that again. I just touch on the number 2 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm up to 5 mallards. So quick, easy way to enter it. Now, say we see a couple of house finches out there. This is a 2-word name for the bird, house finch. You take the first 2 letters of the house. So that's going to be, we see 2 space H-O for house and F for finch. And now we've got house finch right at the top. I touch on house finch. We've got our 2 house finches logged. Now say you've got a 3-word bird name and you see black-billed magpie out there. Well, it's just the first letter of each one of those words. So we're going to say we've got 1, B for black, B for bill, and M for magpie. And there's black-billed magpie. Pops right up for us. Don't worry about the dashes. You know, these quick entry codes, which are very similar to banding codes, just completely ignore the dashes and you will get your bird up quickly there. So I'll touch on that. We got our magpie. Now, let's say there's a Swainson's hawk. I want to talk about how Merlin is nicely integrated with our eBird mobile app. We see a Swainson's hawk flying over, and but we think it now, is that a Swainson's or is that a red-tailed hawk? Sure, it'd be great to look at a picture of that. Well, let's go ahead and pull that up. So 1, Swainson is SW, and Hawk is H. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and log it, but then I'm going to go into detail on that. So just hit the bird again, Swainson's hawk, I touched it, and Merlin shows just to the right of the number 1 there. If I touch on Merlin, up will pop the bird, and there's the Swainson's hawk. Oh yeah, I saw that leading white edge through the wing. No doubt that was my bird. So a great tool to be able to pull up those photographs of that bird right off the bat. Oh, let's see. One other thing I wanted to show you there. Let's go back to that. The maps down below. If you can click on the map there in the lower right-hand corner of Merlin, you'll see the complete range of this bird's distribution across the North American and South American continents. Breeding up north, see its full migratory range way down there in Argentina. So another wonderful feature of Merlin. Also, of course, we got the calls, the sounds. So there we go. Got that guy. So let's head back to the app though. And we're done with our Swainson's hawk. Now we've got some chipping sparrows down the way. The whole little group there, 5 space chipping sparrow. CH for chipping and S for sparrow. And there it is right on the top. We touch on that. We got our 5 birds. Another wonderful thing about if we went into Merlin, we could see the plumages this time of year of an immature, a juvenile, also a non-breeding adult and a breeding adult. So lots of ways to confirm our sightings in the field. Now let's take a look at breeding codes in the detail next section of that. Okay, in the tree we see an American robin. It's got some chicks in there. All right, let's go ahead and put in 1 American AM, R for robin. There it pops right up. And great, but we want to log the breeding code of this because we've got a fantastic breeding code to be able to do for this bird. You'll notice if I pull up the detail on American robin to the lower left, it says breeding code. And Chuck will show us more about this in a minute, but I just wanted to mention that obviously this during breeding season, it's great to take advantage of these breeding codes. The very best breeding code right down at the bottom is nest with young. I'm going to touch on that. And now you'll see where that breeding code was. We now see NY, which says nest with young. I'll say done. And over to the right of our American robin, you see the NY. We've logged a breeding code for this bird. A very good thing to do. Now let's talk about rare birds. Off in the distance in that tree, I see a scarlet tanager. Wow. So 1 space SC for scarlet and T for tanager. And there it is. Notice the R to the right of that bird. Obviously, it's not been reported, which is our red circle, but R over there, it is rare. So I'm going to touch on that. And now notice how it's highlighted in yellow. That's telling us that we need to do some additional documentation on this bird because it's rare. It's going to go to the reviewers in our area. So we want to make sure we've got it documented well. Hopefully you'll be able to get a photo or a recording, but certainly in the description, you're going to type, yes, beautiful, you know, red bird, black wings, unmistakable. And so we're done. Now you notice it's not highlighted in yellow anymore. We've documented our scarlet tanager. Now look at the bottom. You see the check mark in the 7? So far we've logged 7 birds, but we also see all the other possible birds in this area that we're birding. If we prefer just to look at the birds we've logged so far, I just touched on the number 7 check mark, and it only shows us the birds that we've logged so far. So a real handy feature. If we go down the way and we see another American robin, probably dad grabbing the worms, we can just touch on the 1 and it changes it to 2 for the second American robin that we've seen. So I don't have to enter the code, page through the list to find the birds that we'd entered. So a real handy feature. Now let's talk about one additional thing, a really super rare bird that's not even in this list area, and that's a whooping crane flies over. So I'm going to do one space whooping, WH, and a C for crane, and it's not there. But look at that message. Click here to search for the full taxonomy. I'm going to touch on that, and up pops all the WHCs, and whooping crane is the one we want right there. So I'm going to touch on the whooping crane. It's yellow. We'll open it up. We'll document it real well, and we'll say done. We got our picture, and so we're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead, and one other thing I want to mention, say you see a vireo and you're not quite sure. I wonder which vireos are possible right now, because I didn't get a great look. So I'm going to say, okay, one vireo. There is a nice list of all the vireos that can be in this area at this time of the year. So we can go back, do research, pull up Merlin, get some more photos, hopefully get a photo of it, and you're set. So eBird prefers that you limit your checklist to 5 miles in 3 hours at a max. They really like it if you can just do a single mile in a single hour, but it just makes the science better if we have lower mileage and lower time frames on our checklist. So I'm going to click on cancel just to the right of the quick entry screen, and you see it brings back up my list at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and stop this list, and now you see that pop-up. It says stop tracking, and yes, I want to stop the tracking. So now we're at the review screen before we submit it and continue on. This very top one is the location. So orange, choose a location, the warning sign. We got to get a location on this checklist that we're doing. I'm doing this from my home, so I'm just going to touch on home. It's recent, and you've also got recents over here, home. Chatfield is out at Chatfield today. Nearby would be home or the location we're currently at, and then map would also be a great way to locate, you know, where the best location is. So I'm going to click on home, and now that's taken care of. Below that, observers. If you have multiple observers, you can share the checklist and add a person to that if you want. The really important thing right here is this is a complete checklist, and I'm going to check yes it is, because I've done my absolute best to identify every bird that I saw and heard on the list. So a cool thing about checklist is, you know, the scientists love to know the birds that we saw, but it also tells them what was not seen. So a complete checklist is a wonderful tool to tell us what's there and also what is not there. So yes, we're going to do the best job we can to really do a complete checklist. And then right below that, you see add comments. I usually put in like the temperature, which has been fairly brutal today, 96, I don't know, clear and calm. And then any other comments, is Chuck will go into this a little bit more, and you saw that good list that he had, the beautiful comments. Maybe about the habitat, where you saw the bird, what the surroundings were like, and where the good locations were. So good to put as much comment in there as you possibly can. So we're basically done here. At this point, we just submit it, and it will go ahead and post up there. Obviously, I'm not going to do that since this is a pretty crazy list. I wish it was real. I'm just going to hit that hide in the upper right-hand corner, and we're going to go over the bottom screen here just real quick. Checklists are, now you can see there's my home checklist, not submitted and submitted across the top. These are checklists. I was out at Chatfield today. Got the long-tail Jaeger, was very cool. So that's on that list, but not submitted is the one that we just did right now, the home one. I'm not going to submit, but this other one just below it, I did a couple of days ago, and I'm going to go ahead and submit it for you. And I want to go through one cool feature that's a part of these lists. And I'm going to click review. And now you can see at the top on this review screen, I haven't selected a location. Let's go and click on that and click on the map. And you can see this is a hotspot close to me, and it's the Dad Clark Park. And you can see now Ann and I walked all around in this area, and you can see that I, on purpose, but I've certainly done this for real, drove out of the parking lot and forgot to stop the list. So down the way here at the stop sign, I noticed, yes, I didn't stop that list. So in the lower right-hand corner, you see that little green pencil in a white box. I'm going to touch on that, and it's going to bring up another screen that allow me to back off a little bit of time and distance at the end of this list. So see, it's going red. I'm going to bring it back to the parking lot right there, and yay, we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and click done on that. It's going to say you've edited your tracks, so the time and distance are going to be different than what I thought you wanted to do. And I'm going to say yes, go ahead and edit that track. And then I'm going to use the location. I'm going to touch on Dad Clark. So you see it changed at the bottom from that lat long to the Dad Clark hotspot. I'm going to say use this location. Now we've got Dad Clark up there, and we've got a really accurate minutes and miles for our checklist. I'm going to say, yes, that was a completed checklist. And then I'm going to probably come back and put some more data in there, on the comments, most definitely, and submit it. So there goes the list. Now it's submitted. It's not in our unsubmitted. If I go to submitted, it would actually be down here just a little bit. Dad Clark, you can see it there in the middle. So this Explorer is a brand new feature that just showed up for the iPhones, and I think the Androids might have seen this for a bit, but a great way to search for hotspots in your area, built right into the eBird mobile app. So pretty amazing. So with that, I'm actually going to turn this back to Chuck, and I will go ahead and stop this screen broadcast that I've been doing and kick that back over to Chuck. So does that look good? Yay. All right. Okay. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes.
Yeah, so as I have said when we rehearsed this several times, every time I listen to Gregg's presentation about eBird Mobile, I learned something new. And even tonight, with this presentation, I've learned something new about eBird Mobile. And that's one thing that's great about eBird. It's a continually evolving tool. The designers are just continually working to make this an even better tool for us birders. So I'm gonna now, we're gonna talk about the website side of eBird, and I'm gonna share once again my screen. It'll take me a moment here. And we're gonna look at eBird Live. And you should be seeing now the opening page, the home page of eBird. This is what, once you have an account with eBird and you log into ebird.org, this will be the page you'll see. And it is just chock full of information, as every page in eBird is. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here just so you can see that there's a little more than what we see at the top. And I'm not going to go through all of these because we got a lot to cover tonight. But as you can see, just that first page, there's a lot of information for you to look at. Down here, this is a good area to look at here because these are news, recent news about eBird. And often you'll find an announcement about a new feature on eBird down in this news area. So over here on the left-hand side, you'll see an area that says My Stats. And this will be the area where you can see the broad statistics for the numbers of checklists you've entered, the number of species you've observed in your eBird, on your eBird checklists, and so forth and so on. One thing I want to point out here is that anytime you see these light blue areas, Those are likely to be hyperlinks or hot links that will take you to additional information. In this case, this would take you to a list of all of your species that you've observed. This link would take you to all of your completed checklists. The other area, and the area you'll probably most often use when you're working with eBird, is this set of 7 links at the top. Submit, Explore, My eBird, Science, About, News, and Help. We're going to talk about 5 of these tonight. And each one of these, we're just skimming the surface. There'll be a lot more that you can find if you explore them yourself. And you'll probably want to do that over time. So the first thing is the submit area. And this is a place where you can submit lists that you didn't record on the mobile app. Some of you may not want to use the mobile app, in which case, if you're bringing back a paper checklist or a list that you've kept in some other form, you can still submit it to eBird on the website using this. And there's 2 ways you can choose locations. Most of the time, you'll probably use the first 2. Choose from your locations. As you submit checklists, the locations that you're recording those lists for will begin to compile your personal locations. And if you click on that, you can see, and a lot of these are just by coordinates, but then I get down to the ones where they're hotspots that have names, so forth and so on. Find it on a map. If you enter a map, you can get a list of hotspots, or you can find your location on a map of the county, a state, or a province, or a country. The thing that you can do on the website that you can't do in the mobile app is that you can enter historic data. Data for checklists that you acquired before you began using eBird. These are historic lists. And the area that you will use for location on historic lists is often this more general area. Select an entire city, county, or state. And the reason for that is a lot of times in older checklists, you may not have recorded things like the starting time, which eBird Mobile would want you to enter. You may not have entered the duration. You may not have entered as precise a location as eBird hotspots. So there are a lot of ways that you can enter these old checklists that don't have the kind of complete information that we get with our new eBird lists. And the place where you can find instructions on how to enter those historical lists is under Help. We'll look at Help in a little more in a little bit. But I want to spend more time really looking at these areas now. So this is an area that you'll very quickly become familiar with, particularly if you're already entering your checklists in eBird Mobile. But Explore is where you can begin to use eBird as a tool for enhancing your birding experiences in the field. This is where you can look for information on where a particular species has been seen recently, for detailed information about how to identify a species. And you can also then explore, okay, what's being seen in a particular county or at a particular hotspot. So if you explore, there's a couple of ways you can explore species. If you use this tool, this will give you a little bit of identification information, as well as other kinds of useful information about the species. Here you can find photos, illustrations of the bird, identification tips, and recordings of the song or sound of the bird. One thing that's fun here is there's also an area of statistics, and this line down here are the statistics on how many observations of this species are in the eBird database, how many have photos, how many have audio recordings. And there's also another line for your observations. How many observations of black terns have I submitted? How many have photos? How many have audio? If you're somebody who's looking to make an impact on the birding world, this will tell you where you can make that impact. If you look down here, got a good number of black tern photos or reports with photos, but boy, not many with audio. So if you want to start upping your contributions to the world of birds or bird science, mastering recording with your smartphone will give you a chance to enhance the statistics here for most species. For most species, you'll find that there are fewer observations with recordings than with photos. But if what you're interested in is finding out where you can find a black tern in Colorado this month, you want to look at species maps. And once again, we enter the species up here. And we get a pull down menu that gives us that option. And if we're interested in finding them this month, we can narrow this down to August. And we can say current year, and we can enter Colorado. And now we'll get a look at where we can expect to find black terns in Colorado. Uh-oh, what happened here? Oh, it didn't take. That's because I forgot to set. Have to remember to set that. Yeah, there we go. So now, if we zoom in, we can see the South Platte runs here, and those purple squares or violet squares indicate where there are records for black terns, and the closer we zoom in, the more detailed we get. And we can find these hotspots indicated by the little teardrop that show us where there are checklists that have submitted in August this year that have black terns recorded. And you can click on that and you'll see recent checklists. Pruitt Reservoir and the Logan County sign on the 24th, pretty recent. So might still be a good place to go for black terns. Over here we have Jackson. So that'll give you an idea of where you might find black terns, and you can do that for pretty much any species. Hotspots and regions. So the explore regions is the area that you would use if you want to just explore recent sightings or checklists or birding activity in a particular county, state, province, or country. And let's say you are a county birder. Coloradans, we like to bird, we like to develop county lists, pay attention to our county lists. So let's say you want to work on your Adams County list. I can scroll down and find Adams. Where's Adams, Colorado? There it is, right there at the top, Adams, Colorado. And that'll take me to a table that will show me how many species we're likely to find in Adams County. What is being seen recently? Here we see recent checklists for Adams County. If you click on the date, it'll take you that particular checklist. And you can see the species that are being seen here. You can also see some additional check. What are the hotspots, the best hotspots in Adams County? And if you click on the hotspot, it'll take you to details on that hotspot, checklists that have been found there recently. But if you're interested in a particular hotspot, you can just go right to that hotspot here just by entering the name. And let's look at Bar Lake again. So you'll see several locations, several hotspots for Bar Lake. We can have a general hotspot for the whole area of Bar Lake State Park. But there's also a more localized hotspot for the area below the dam, or the knee drag trail, or the south end, or the banding station area, boat ramp area. And eBird would always like us to use, when we're entering our data, the narrowest area that we can. So they'd prefer, for example, if we're walking the knee drag trail, that we just use this specific hotspot. But you can click any of these if you're just exploring and see details recent checklists. And again, you can see who's been birding there recently, what they've been finding. If you click on that individual checklist, you'll see how many species, distance covered, and if the person has entered a lot of data or comments, then you can see how they birded the area. Let's see, did I have, no, okay. So this is really a useful tool if you're planning a birding trip and you want to see what you can expect. Sometimes if I'm thinking about 2 or 3 different areas that I might bird today, I'll look at each of those areas to see where maybe there's been some interesting sightings before I decide on which area I go to. Now, the area that I think is most fun on this particular page, the Explore page, is this little area down here where we have target species, alerts, top 100, patch totals, yard tools. We're not going to deal with these today. I'm going to let you explore them on your own. I want to talk a bit about target species. Target species is a fun tool if you want to see what new birds you can add to a life list. And you can do this with a county list, a state list, a country list, any level you want. So let's say you're working on your county birding list for Logan County. And we'll select Logan County, Colorado. And it's August. So in August, what can I find that I can add to my Logan County life list? And I could actually narrow that down to year list if I wanted to, or to a month list. But I'm going to say I want to add to my Logan County life list. What can I find? So this month, I might be looking for nighthawks out there, broad-tailed hummers. Wow, look at that. A lot of species I could add to my Logan County life list if I head out there right now. The percentage over here is the percentage or the frequency on which that species has appeared on checklists for that county, for that time period. And so 9.5% of the checklists for August for Logan County have common nighthawk. Pretty good percentage chance. And then the map would show me where in Logan County those birds are showing up. And again, the teardrops are hot spots. Red ones are recent, I believe, and blue are older records. On the other hand, okay. So let's look at, a lot of people have been disappointed when the rare bird alert disappeared in Colorado or was discontinued. But the thing that can substitute for that, again, it operates differently. It doesn't operate the same way that rare bird alert does, but you can get rare bird alerts or your needs alerts for Colorado or any specific area through eBird. And so there's several ways you can do that. First of all, if you are chasing your ABA life list, then you can get alerts on ABA rarities that show up anywhere in the ABA area by just subscribing to these lists. So if that South American rarity shows up in Florida and you subscribe to this, you will get an alert on it. Rare bird alerts. Again, here, rare bird alerts, you can set this for Colorado. You could set it for a specific county. You could set it for another country. And let's see, rare bird alerts. Let's say I'm interested in Boulder County. That's my county. So I can do one of two things. I can either right now see what rare birds have been showing up in Boulder County in the past 7 days. And I'll get a list of those here with the locations. By clicking on the checklist, I can see the full checklist for that location. Not bad, I should be out birding. Or I can subscribe, and if I subscribe for Boulder County, then what'll happen is I will get daily alerts for rare birds showing up in Boulder County. The other thing I can do is I can say, okay, I want to know where I can see birds that I need for my Boulder County list. So again, I can pick Boulder County. I could do this for Colorado or any geographical level. Once again, I can either view things that I need for my Boulder County list that are showing up. Notice it's a much bigger list. Some of the things that I need aren't even that rare. Okay. Or I can subscribe. And if I subscribe, I'll get daily alerts. So right now I am in fact subscribed to that, and I get daily alerts for both rare birds and needs for Boulder County. So the final area that I want to look at is the top 100 area. And this is where if you feel competitive, and again, evolutionary psychology tells us that we are all competitive whether or not we confess to it. This is where you can see how you stack up against other birders in a particular area. Could be Colorado, could be your county, could be nationally. I'm going to pick Colorado. My 2020 list, how am I doing on my 2020 list? Where do I stack up? And you can see I really haven't been out birding enough. I'm in the top 100 though, so that's nice. But I need to get out a lot more if I'm going to catch up with coal sage. So you can pick your level of competition here and see where you stand against, where you stack up against other birders, if that's your cup of tea. All right, so when we looked at exploring, and there's a lot of other areas you can explore here, but I think that'll give you a start for venturing to that area. My eBird is where you can keep track of and manage your own eBird checklists, and there's several ways you can do that. You'll get your statistics here, your personal statistics. One thing that's worth looking at is this area down here. You'll see that there's a list here of all the countries that you've birded. Over here, you can see how many species you've seen in that country in your life that are recorded on eBird lists, your year list, and your month list. But if you click on the country, you can break it down. If you're more interested in your state lists, you can break it down by state. If you're a county birder, click on Colorado and you'll see how you stack up in the Colorado counties. And again, your life list for the county, your year list, and your month list. And a lot of birders then like to enter their historic data so they can get a more accurate picture of how those lists stack up. Okay, so the other way you can explore your and manage your data is with this set of links down here. The checklists is where you can go to manage your checklists, and you'll have a, this page shows you 25 at a time. But if you really want to go back and look at older lists, you can click Show All, and it'll give you all of the lists that you've entered in eBird back to your oldest list. Let's see here. So if you check View or Edit, it will take you to the specific checklist. And one of the things that you can do here, that's a handy tool, if you're a photographer or if you're starting out, or if you have been recording bird songs, you can manage your media here. Manage Media allows you to add photos or recordings to your checklist. And I'm going to do that right now. I click Add Media. It takes me to my computer here, and I can, in this case, I've got my photos already on my desktop, and I'm going to add a couple of photos right there. And those photos will show up, and then you'll have the option of adding a little bit more information. It's going to take a minute. There we go. Okay. So how do I rate my photo? I can give it my impression, and then I can indicate anything I know about age and sex, behavior, and I can add those tags. And so I'm gonna get out of that and finish that up later. Oh, that's an interesting thing. Okay, we're gonna have to do that a different way. Sorry there, the Zoom panel here was interfering with my, getting out of that checklist. Okay. So I'm going to go back now to my list of checklists. Other things you can do is you can share that checklist with other people who are on the field trip with you. eBird likes us to minimize the number of checklists for a group. So if you're out birding with a group, they'd like you to have one person keep that checklist and then share it with the rest of the group. The other thing you can do is you can delete the checklist. And so if you are getting shared checklists for other trips you've been in with other birders, this is where your shared checklist will be listed. You can access it by clicking that. You'll see something similar to what you saw with checklists. So we're going to move on from that. So as you submit more and more lists to eBird, your selection, your list of locations is growing. And you can actually manage those locations by going to this area of the website. And this will be a complete list of all your checklists. And over here, it will tell you what type of list it is. Is it a personal list, a personal spot, or is it a shared location? So a shared location is an eBird hotspot. A personal location is one that you have just identified yourself. And let's see if I can. So one of the things you can do with those is edit those locations. There's several ways you can edit it. You can rename it. So if I actually had a specific name for this, I could replace the coordinates with that name. The other thing is, if this is in the wrong spot, this little marker indicating where that checklist was recorded, I could move it. The other thing I can do is I can merge it. So I'm going to do that with this checklist. And what I'm doing now is I am zooming in, and you'll see this is where that checklist is that I've recorded. Actually, there were 3 checklists for that location, but there's a hotspot right there. And I know that those checklists were actually at that hotspot. And so I'm going to merge it, those 3 checklists, with the Hotel Maya Balam. I'm going to merge it, and then I'm leaving this checked, so it's going to delete that other location. And this is a good way. As you build up your checklist, sometimes you'll find that you have several locations that are really just one spot, and you want to consolidate them, and that's a place where you can do that. Oops, why didn't I? Oh, okay. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go to manage my checklists. Okay. So that's a handy tool. Why is that not getting out of that? There we go. Okay. 2 other areas that it's nice to pay attention to. One is your profile, and this is the way you're going to be seen by other birders. And so you can set up your profile initially, and then you can edit it if you want to. This little map shows you the areas that you where you bird generally. But you can add a photo here. If you have a website, you can add your website, and you can add some information about yourself. And that's a nice way to introduce yourself to other birders. The other area where you can manage a little bit about the way you see the website is this area of preferences. So if you select preferences, here you can select how you want to see the bird list. Do you want to see just common names? Do you want to see scientific names? Or would you like to see both? And I like to see both, because then as I'm looking through the common names, I'm also becoming familiar with the scientific names. How do you want to be seen publicly? Do you want to be seen with your name, or anonymously. And it's, to my mind, much preferable to just identify yourself. There's no reason to be embarrassed or to hide your identity on eBird. And then here you can keep some kinds of data concealed from other birders, but leaving these open is the way we participate in the birding community, make our checklists useful to other birders. And then this one down here, just as do you want to receive email notifications when someone shares a list, and it's very useful to have a notice when the list has been shared with you. All right. I was going to skip this area, and then I looked at it today and I decided not to. Science. A lot of times people want to know, how is my data being used by scientists? And this is an area where you can explore that. And the first thing is, there's just some useful tools that eBird itself provides. And one of them is the eBird status and trends maps. And so let's pick, we want to go with brown-capped rosy finches. Let's see what we can see about brown-capped rosy finches. So over here on the abundance animations, you can actually see a map showing the movement of rosy finches during the year. That was not a good, that's not as exciting there, because they, as we'll see, rosy finches are pretty much confined to Colorado. So let me go to a different area. I want to go to what I want to, let's go, I'm looking now at abundance regional statistics, and we're going to pick Colorado, and we're going to see is that, yeah. So here, this is interesting. These are the statistics for Colorado for proportion of eBird records during various seasons for brown-capped rosy finches. And look at this, 93% of the occurrence of brown-capped rosy finches in the non-breeding season are in Colorado. In the breeding season, Colorado has 100% of the brown-capped rosy finch population. That I thought was interesting for any species. So I'm going to go back though to the abundance maps, and we'll pick a different species. I'm going to change species here to warbling vireo. Let's take warbling vireo, and now let's go back to the abundance animation. This will be more interesting. So now we're going to look at the abundance animation for warbling vireos. And this is, down here you can see the date, and you can see the movement, the flow of the warbling vireo population through the year. And you can see the moving from, you see that the majority of the population winters in Mexico or Central America, and then the breeding population is in North America, pretty much the northern part of North America. So this is a fun area to explore. Let's see where we get to that. Yeah. So there you can see, you know, already eBird data is providing fun and interesting tools for birders. But the other thing that you can see is if you really want to see how else eBird is being eBird data is being used, you can look at the publications, and you can see a complete list of publications by year where eBird data is being used. And as you can see, this is a pretty extensive list. So a lot of researchers now are using eBird data for their studies of species, of abundance, of occurrence, of trends. So your data that you contribute to eBird is being widely used. Final area I want to look at, and not going to give it as much attention as it should because we need to wrap this up, but this is a very rich area, this help center. You almost have a complete course in ornithology here, or at least in ornithology data capturing. So there's a section here on getting started, and I recommend if you're just starting with eBird that you go through each of these links. And then as you're ready to move on to the next steps with eBird, there's some great tools here. One of the things that eBird helps us get used to is recording our bird data, not with just a check mark on a list, but with counts, because that data is much more useful. It's actually, you'll enjoy it yourself more as you look back at your reports too, if you have numerical data. So some of us get frustrated though, how do you count birds? And so there's a good description here of tools or techniques for counting birds. And in particular, what do you do when you start getting into those flocks of somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000 Canada geese in winter? And so there's good information here on techniques for estimating flock size with large flocks of birds. So that's very handy. Gregg mentioned earlier, so if you don't see down here the specific area that answers a question that you might have about eBird, you can just enter it here in the search area. And one thing that Gregg mentioned was breeding codes. And there are two things I encourage birders to do to make their lists more useful to other birders, but also to researchers and to themselves when they look back on their records. And one of those things is to start using the breeding codes. Breeding codes are codes that were originally developed for use in breeding bird atlas work. And you can now enter these codes on any checklist during the breeding season. You can enter these codes when you see various breeding bird actions. If you hear a singing bird during the breeding season, you can enter the code for a singing bird. If you see a pair of birds behaving like a pair in the right habitat during the breeding season, you can enter that code. Gregg mentioned the nest with young. If you see a nest with young, you can enter that code. And incidentally, eBird asks you if you do see young in the nest. Let's say you see 4 robins in that nest that Gregg mentioned. You would actually count the adult that you saw plus the 4 birds. So you would add 5 birds to your list. And so there's details here on exactly what those breeding codes mean. And when you start documenting breeding codes, you're becoming a better birder because you're paying more attention to the behaviors, you're learning more, and actually you're enjoying the birding more. It gives you another dimension to the birding to enjoy. The other thing that I encourage, of course, is using the comments area both for the general description of your trip. How did you bird the area? Where did you bird? What are things like, what is the water level? It's very useful, particularly in August, say, to know which lakes have good shoreline for shorebirds, which lakes don't. So adding those kinds of descriptions to your list makes your list much more useful to other birders. And those can also be useful to researchers using those lists. So with that, I want to point out one more thing when we get back here, which is at the top of the page, we have a little donate area. And this is an unpaid solicitation for donations to eBird. eBird is managed by a growing and skilled group of birders, technicians, ornithologists, but all of them are birders. They all understand us as birders, and they are continually working to make this a better tool for us. In fact, it was interesting. The other day when we were rehearsing this, somebody asked the question, how old is eBird? And it turns out eBird was started in 2002, but it wasn't very much adopted at that time. Not many birders were using it. And so the eBird crew started trying to figure out how to make it more fun for birders to participate. And the result of that is this incredible wealth of tools for birders here available to us now. So I urge you to support it and watch for the ways that it becomes a more fun and engaging tool for all of us to use. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Bill for your questions. So Bill, it's back to you.
Okay. All right. Chuck, Greg, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. We've had a number of questions, one of which is if you eventually decide that it wasn't a Swainson's hawk, but it was a red tail, how do you change your entry?
Oh yeah, it's easy to do on the app. You just swipe to the left, red delete button will show up there. You hit delete, and then you can go back in and type one red-tailed hawk and enter it. So yeah, you can do it right on the checklist, or if you've submitted it and then realize your mistake later, you can edit it on the website like Chuck showed us, the view and edit, and you can go in there and erase the wrong entry and go ahead and add the proper one. So easy to do.
Actually, and if you do it on the website, if you make the discovery after you've completed and submitted the checklist in the field, and you discover it while you're at your computer and you're working on the website, there's actually a line beside the species that says change species. And you can actually specifically change the species. You click the change species, it'll give you a little area to enter the new species. You enter the new species and submit that. Okay,
thank you. And then how do you erase a checklist if you don't want to submit it?
You just can delete it if you don't want to submit it. So there, when I clicked on the checklist on the bottom of the eBird mobile app, you can just swipe that again to the left and delete it, and you don't have to worry about it, or just not submit it, but you may as well delete it off your app. And you can also delete on the website. So where Chuck was showing us where you can view and edit, off to the right is an area where you can delete a checklist that you've already submitted as well. So either way.
Okay. Had another question about, you tagged your number one robin as a nesting bird, and then you later added another robin, which was not an NY, not a nesting one. So will the second robin be recorded as a nester with young, or how do you record that the second bird is not a nester?
You know, it's going to be a total of the birds. So like Chuck said, we had two nestlings, and your totals are really just the totals of all birds seen on that list. And you can document in your description, you know, we saw one bird sitting close to the nest with 3 nestlings in there. But then all additional birds get added to that count.
Yeah. Okay. So just to add to that, when you can enter the breeding code, but you also have an area for every species where you can make additional notes. It's called details. And in the details, when I see a breeding activity, particularly something like a nest with young, I like to add in the details the specific information. So for example, that case of 2 robins, if we had seen one robin with a nest, an adult with a nest, and there were, say, 3 young in it, then I would add a note that said adult at nest with 3 young. If the next robin doesn't have that, then I won't necessarily add that, but the note will clarify that what I had was 1 nest. If in fact the second robin was also at a nest, then I would add that in the details. I would say something like 2 nests with young in the details. So that kind of information, again, increases the scientific value of the data that you're providing. The more detail you provide, the more useful your information is.
Okay. And this is a related question, which I think you've already answered, but do you include young birds, nestlings, for example, in your total number of species observed? I think you've answered that.
Yeah, so the answer to that is indeed yes. eBird wants you, and again, this is one of the things that makes looking through the help area, really paying attention to it, useful. It's an incredibly good help area, well-designed, layered, multi-layered. And one of the things they do tell you when they're talking about counting is if you see a nest with young, yes, you count all the adults and the young.
Okay. And then if you already have an account with Feeder Watch and you're setting up one with eBird, does your ID and password pass on, or do you have to do something different to establish an eBird account?
Your information for your, I believe, for your nest account will continue. Most of all of the tools through Cornell you can use the same account.
For Feeder Watch.
So Feeder Watch is through Cornell, and yes.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Is Feeder Watch Cornell? Or is that Audubon? That I don't recall.
I don't know. Any of the panelists know? I don't know.
I don't.
Yeah.
Trying to remember that. I think it's Cornell, but I'm not sure on that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure on that.
And then what does an X next to a species mean?
Well, an X just indicates that the species was seen, but there's no numbers. And eBird would really love us to avoid using the X if we can at all. Chuck showed us that great part of the help where you can estimate, large flocks of birds, but specific counts are really important. So obviously if you can put the X in there and that just means it was seen, but we don't know if it was 1 or 100,000. So, not a good thing to use X, but in emergencies they can be used. Yes.
Okay. And then is there any way to get my personal location visible on maps? There seems to be a lot of limitations to them. I'm located in an area with very limited documentation, and I'm hoping to share my sightings with my neighbors who do not yet use eBird and possibly encourage their participation. And my location is on private property.
Well, even the personal locations, do show on the eBird maps.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess I don't understand the question because personal locations are in the blue and they show on the eBird maps, just like the orange teardrops, which are hotspots, which
Yep.
I'll just mention that, hotspots are available and can be updated. If you've got a personal location that you think should be a hotspot, there's documentation to walk you through on how to recommend that as a hotspot. Obviously, private property, you don't want that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the mobile app, does voice to text work? This person is a poor typist.
I think it does. I haven't used it. Have you used it, Chuck?
I have not used it, no. So I don't know if it works with eBird or not.
Okay. Does the eBird software have the ability to reconcile locations later? For instance, I couldn't find Norma's Grove in the Pawnee, but it turns out it's under Pawnee grasslands. Should I stick with the GPS readings?
That's where I would use that merge location function. So I would find if you had, I'm assuming that the person asking this question entered that checklist as a personal hotspot and then discovered that there's a hotspot for Norma's Grove. So that's where you can go to your checklist location and click on the edit function and merge it with the eBird hotspot.
Okay. And then we've gotten an update on the feeder watch, and this viewer indicates that it is through Cornell.
Oh,
So
good.
in that case, you can use your same login information and your same account that you use with feeder watch.
Okay. Is there any time limit, months, years, to how long you can add pictures to your entries?
Not so I'm assuming that question is asking, can I add old photos to an old checklist? And if that's the question, then I don't think there's any limit. No.
Okay.
In fact, that's something I've realized I need to do. I need to go through some of my old photos and start adding them to some of my old eBird lists.
Yeah.
Okay. How does one convert voluminous historical data from ABCIS easily and quickly?
So I have not done that, but there are instructions, again, in the help area on how to add data from a database. And I'm sure that it would include information from things like ABCIS. So eBird encourages that, and there are tools on the website to guide you through that.
Okay.
And I would look in the help area for that under historical data.
Okay. If you have checklists recorded on the Audubon app, is there a quick way to transfer that to eBird?
I'm not familiar with the Audubon app, so I don't know.
Okay.
All
right. Well, that takes care of our questions. Thank you very much, Chuck and Greg, for a most interesting presentation, and I'm sure illuminating a lot of us to what all eBird offers. Dave, you had some closing comments?
We're not hearing you, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Greg. This was a wonderful presentation, Chuck and Greg. Thank you very much for that. A video of tonight's program will be posted on DFO's website. I hope you'll join us again as DFO continues its series of monthly programs. Zoom in at 7 o'clock Monday, September 21st, to hear the Ken Kaufman present Patterns of Bird Migration in North America. With that, our time is up. We thank you all for attending tonight's program, and it's just great to have you and have so many of you present and asking questions. Thank you and good night.